It's January 17th. Maryland is in first place in the Big Ten, and today just a huge, huge game against Michigan State at the Xfinity Center. Game time, 4 o'clock. Might even be a few singles left, but this will be a raucous atmosphere. Probably a potential rival for Maryland, don't know. But last night, Tom Izzo spoke at Gary Williams' tribute down at the Marriott Convention Center. What a great event it was. We'll talk about that later. But, man, he talked about the possibility of Maryland. He said just they haven't played Maryland enough. But today, to me, Big Ten basketball starts in the earnest way for Maryland with a huge home game. One of the two premier games of the year at home, of course, them and Wisconsin coming later in the year. To talk about the game of the day is my good buddy, and that, of course, is Patrick Stevens. Patrick, welcome in this morning. Great. It's you think about the game, you go back to the game on December the 30th, and I don't think this one will resemble that at all. That first half of that game was one of the most bizarre halves I think I've ever seen two good teams play. Good guess, good prediction. Patrick, Travis Trice presented some problems. Knowing Izzo, knowing the history of Michigan State, knowing the history of great coaches, they will attack Melo Trimble today. I'm almost positive of it, or I would certainly think so. Do you feel that as well?
Maryland's big weakness, which is it probably isn't going to get a whole lot done down low on a consistent basis. So the next best thing they might be able to do is try to take away what's been one of the great strengths, which is the point guard play has been much better than anyone.
When Maryland played Michigan State, they were kind of like at the end of not such a great run, and yet since that game they seem to have turned it on. What have they been doing different?
Well, I would say that some of the issue here is, they got to play Maryland, they got to play Indiana at home, and Indiana is generally speaking not a great team away from the ball. They survived Northwestern. I'm not sure they're that great, but I think in some ways they just kind of reversed it. If you look back at their losses, lost by a point to Notre Dame in overtime, lost in overtime to Texas Southern, lost by 2 in double overtime to Maryland. I mean, you're not talking about a team that's that far away from having only 2 losses, and those 2 losses being to Duke and Kansas on neutral court. So I'm not sure they're that much different. I still think much the same of Michigan State as I did a few weeks back, which is that they're a tough, well-coached team of role players, and that's not to denigrate them a ton. There's just not a singular star you think about for a lot of teams that they've had over the years. Instead, it's a team of really good players who have all contributed in different ways largely throughout their careers. Maybe not that one big guy that you think of, even recently, a guy like a Draymond Green that could just take over a game. Trice is a guy that's done that a few times this year. Even you look at a few other guys on the roster. I mean, there's good players here. There's good players like a Valentine. Maybe not the exceptional top 20 player national. But I still think they're going to want to come big against Maryland and somehow get a sweep of them. That was going a long way in terms not just in terms of Big Ten tournaments needed, having that tiebreaker in their back pocket, but also that would look pretty good come March the 15th when the NCAA
It's funny, their strength, they're playing into Maryland's strength a little bit, and it's hard for me to even say it, but they are an excellent three-point shooting team. And yet that seems to be Maryland's strength this year is the defense of the three-point shot, and that's been their weakness for I don't know how many years. What?
Yeah, there's that. It feels like that's a very big difference, a very good point on your part. It's been very weird seeing Maryland not give up that random 20, 22, 25 point game to somebody that is the team's number 3 or number 4 scorer. And that seemed to have happened on a regular basis. Really, it feels like for almost 10 years now. But you're right, Michigan State's very good overall. Maryland, I think one of the things that they've done though, it's not exclusively that they've played necessarily great three-point defense. They've also denied the ball inside of their and they force teams settling for those shots outside. You think about that Minnesota game in particular. Minnesota coming in with a reputation of being a really good three-point shooting team, and Maryland just taking away everything else and letting them have their shots. So I think that is something that's important to consider as well. That Maryland has done a great job overall of defending the two as well as.
Maryland, here's a question for you, and just something that came out of my mind I was thinking about last night. Maryland's shooting has just been horrendous since really the Big Ten season started. When I say horrendous, 36%, they were, what were they? They were like 8 for 33 in the second half. I mean, it's hard to win games when you shoot like that.
Yeah, that's what it all boils down to is you have to score to win.
Right.
It's not the most complex thing in the world. And you're right. That was the game that Maryland put together on Tuesday or Wednesday against Rutgers. That was probably about their team. If you're grading it, that was not a particularly great game. You would probably look at it as a D offense and a B plus defense, particularly as the game waned on. Maybe it's a B level defense. They survived. Let's face it. You look over the last 4 seasons, there aren't very many times that Maryland would have won with that sort of shooting performance at any point against anybody.
Not with the players they had.
Certainly not. So, I thought in some ways, as forgettable as that game was, I mean, when you're sitting down and thinking about the highlights of this season, no matter how it ends up, when you're sitting in the offseason thinking about Maryland's season, that's a game that people will not even bring up. It's just not something that it's happened, it's done, it's over. But I do think the takeaway from that game was that even if Maryland wasn't particularly good on offense and didn't play particularly well, they won a game that they simply would not have won the last time.
Patrick, that furthers my point. Again, we're talking with Patrick Stevens here on Coons Ford Presents a Sports Maven. My point is, they're playing defensively and rebounding wise at an intensity and level that has not been seen by a Mark Turgeon team. He'd be the first to admit to that. Or
I would say by a Mark Turgeon team at Maryland.
Right. Oh, definitely at Maryland. It's the Mark Turgeon dream team. And you could tell that by coach's demeanor. All right. But do you think some of that intensity is reflecting in the poor shooting? Perhaps a little winded when they shoot. Because I've watched Jake Layman miss shots that I've never seen him miss. And he's not even close.
I'm not sure what to make of that. And that may be the case. I'm not sure if I would jump to that conclusion at this point. I think you might have seen a fair number of guys simply play a little bit above their level for the moment in non-conference play.
Mm-hmm.
I think if we're being realistic, the team is 16-2 right now is better than anyone would get to be this stage.
You got.
And I think that when you look back and think about even just trying to forecast non-conference play, I think that was a team that looked like it was probably going to have 2 losses at this point, or going into league play. And then you start thinking about how the conference schedule is stacked up. It in those first 3 league road games, I think anybody would have signed up for that from a Maryland perspective. So I think in some ways, maybe they're not quite as good as their record suggests they are, but that doesn't mean that they're not better than we all thought they were going to be in the first place. And so it's certainly possible that you're looking at guys kind of coming back and facing tougher competition and tougher defense. And I think there's also something to be said about trying to wedge Des Wells back into the lineup. And suddenly, a guy like Layman, his role is a little bit different now than it was before. I do think, you look at Trimble, he's carried a very large load, and as ready as he was, maybe he's wearing down a little bit. That's possible. It's bound to happen for a freshman that's playing as much as he is. So that might be something that might be worth monitoring on Maryland's part, just trying to make sure that he stays as fresh as possible for the next few months.
Patrick, this is Wayne Viener. I have a question about what do you think the Big Ten style of refereeing is doing to this game? Because these past couple of games have been as much a hockey game or wrestling match as basketball. Do you think that has an effect on the shooting percentage?
I don't think so. I think you have different officials. There's some crossover. Some of these guys that you've seen, like for example, Terry Weiner is a guy who worked the game the other day. He's popped up doing a handful of ACC games, not a ton, but certainly a handful of them. And I think back to some of the other games that you've seen so far. Mike East is a guy who's interacted with the Big Ten that has done some Maryland games so far this season. But I would also say, there has been. I think about the Minnesota game. That was not exactly the smoothest officiating game in general, but I think you're going to see that. And I also believe that stylistically there isn't as much difference from region to region, both in terms of style of play and style of officiating that there used to be. So I think that's probably not the place to be seeking an answer as to what's different for Maryland in general.
Patrick is everybody in the media knows is a statistical freak. I think that's a compliment. That's not a criticism, Patrick. And he was the first guy I know of who was keeping plus minuses as far as players on the court for Maryland. And he also does his bracketology that's set up. So first of all, let's look at the guys coming off the bench. Who's got the best plus minus? And I sort of set you up for it. It's my fault. But, just in your sense, is it John Graham? Is it a Nickens? Do you remember? Or
I don't remember off the top of my head. No, I'm sorry. But I would say that you mentioned Graham, and I'm glad you did, because I know when we talked before the season started, I think I described him something along the lines of a guy that knows his role and fills it really, really well. It doesn't try to be anything he's not. And that's exactly what he turned out to be for this team. And incredibly valuable. I think in the long term, they obviously, first of all, they'll have Robert Carter Jr. next year. But also, you'll see, Tchaikovsky and Dodd kind of splitting that role. And I think at this point, realistically, neither of those guys is prepared to be a 25-minute guy. And Graham allows them the opportunity to be such a great bridge. And you think back to that Michigan State game, and he played really, really well that night out the Atlantic. And he's a guy that I think, even if he doesn't necessarily light up the scoreboard, he is the sort of defensive presence in there. Maybe not so much as a rim protector, but just as a guy that gets after everything, that really has helped foster the defensive identity that's for him. So even if necessarily the plus minus number didn't reflect, I think that he has been a really valuable guy in a very quiet way.
I thought that without Jonathan Graham, they probably don't beat Purdue. I thought that he was special in that game defensively, guarding guys that were 7 inches taller than he was.
It's easy to watch that guy the every time you see him and think about what he isn't. But when you focus on what he actually is, it's incredibly valuable for them, and much more so than I think anybody can get when he goes transfer.
Is it me, or does he ever get a call? It seems like every call goes against him.
I don't know about that, but I think some of that too is if you're not necessarily an offensive-oriented player, you're not going to draw as many fouls either.
Patrick, let's say the season ends. We're like, if you were bracketing the team right now, I mean, I saw Lenardi has him as a 3 seed. What's Patrick Stevens has him right now?
Probably about 4. I think the safety in that 4, maybe the low 4, high 5 ballpark. You know, I think the key for anybody this year, and I haven't done a full-fledged 1 to 68 yet, but I have mapped out the first 16 this week. And the key, I think, is to not be the last number 4 seed. You think back to 2010, Maryland was the last number 4 seed, and they got shipped out to Spokane. This year, if you're the last number 4 seed, you're probably going after Seattle in the absence of teams on the West Coast that are top 15, top 20 caliber. But if they're the second number 4, third number 4, it keeps places like Jacksonville or Pittsburgh or Columbus in play. I don't think Maryland's going to wind up heading to Charlotte. That's going to be probably 2 of Duke, Virginia, and North Carolina. But I think those other 3, which are somewhat accessible, particularly Pittsburgh and Columbus to a slightly lesser extent, I think all of those places are possibilities for Maryland to wind up and all is said and done. So I think at this stage, given the accomplishments, 5-1 away from College Park, a team that has done its best work on the road. I mean, the Iowa State victory on the neutral floor, at Oklahoma State, at Michigan State. The Oklahoma State victory is worth so much more than frankly, it probably looked like it could be when the season started. The Cowboys would have themselves well in Big 12 play. And so at this stage, I think that they would slot in for something to think about here. Is people bicker about frames of leagues and whatnot. I'm not a big believer in really comparing leagues all that much. I think teams are much more important. But when you look at the Big Ten teams, there aren't a ton of top 50 teams in that league. You've got Michigan State, you've got Maryland, you've got Wisconsin, and Indiana now is slipped in there as well. But what that means by having a lack of top 50 teams is it means you have a lack of opportunities to get top 50 wins. And I think that Maryland's in a spot where it has the opportunity to pile up victories. There's no doubt about that. But at the same time, there's not an opportunity not a lot of opportunities, I should say, to really enhance their resume as much as some other schools do. And so, in a lot of ways, that does like a great deal of importance on today, one of those handful of remaining opportunities in the regular season to do so. Now, granted, there's teams that can float in and out of the top 50. Iowa and Ohio State are 2 that immediately come to mind, and I actually think Illinois was in there as well after winning the other day. But I think that that's something that could ultimately hold Maryland back. They can keep winning, and teams from like an ACC or a Big 12 that maybe have a few extra good teams to play on the schedule can put together similar records and wind up passing them. And so I think that if Maryland keeps up what it's been doing, a 3 or a 4 or a 5 is probably the sort of neighborhood.
All right, real quick, we're out of time, but who wins today, us or Sparty?
I think Maryland survives in another close game. You know, I think something in the high 60s or something along those lines is probably something to look forward to.
All right, Patrick, thanks a lot. We'll see you at the Xfinity Center.
Take care, Bruce.
All right. All right, this is Bruce Posner. You are listening to Coons Ford Presents a Sports Maven. Got a lot to talk about when we come back. Gary Kubiak, his future with the Ravens is looking bleak, as well as Dan Duquette's future with the Orioles is looking bleak. Orioles signed 4 guys. We want to talk about what they were paid and ton of stuff to talk about. We'll be back in a few minutes here on CBS Sports Radio, 1,300. Geez, only 20 minutes.
Good though.
He is good. He didn't have this plus minus. It's my fault.
Still liability.
It's okay.
They got one live.
Yeah,
Science
science.
Kurt.
Okay.
Yeah.
Get Freddie on the phone when we come back, okay?
Well, guys, this is what happens behind the scenes in the commercial breaks. We got Bruce there. Intern Mason just walked in. Mason, you want to wave hi to the crowd? There you go. So I know you're probably not going to get on the air today, but you got a chance last night to go do something special that we're going to talk about when we come. Why don't you sit down where Bruce was? And I'm going to turn down the background. So Mason, last night you got to see what I think is absolutely Maryland royalty at the Gary Williams tribute dinner. You want to tell me you got to meet Gary Williams? Actually shake hands with Gary. I just put a picture up on Facebook. We'll put it up on the Terp Talk Radio. You got to see Scott Van Pelt. What was your impression of Scott?
He's a lot bigger than he looks on TV. And he was really nice and looked like just a true Maryland fan.
He is. So, a little bigger than you thought he'd be?
Yeah. He even looked a lot bigger than you.
Yeah, he's about 6'4" in real life. And he was bald man on campus. So he's going to be at the game today. His wife let him come to the tribute dinner, so he left Connecticut, flew down to be the MC at the Gary Williams event, and then he'll be at the Michigan State game today. Who else did you get to see? Derek Lewis. All of 6'7", 6'8". Did he look like a center from a basketball team?
Yeah, definitely had the body to be a center. Looked a lot like Devontae Dodd.
Yeah, I think there's some similarities between the way Derek Lewis played defense, the way DeMonte's been playing defense. Well, look who's back.
I'm
It's
back.
Bruce. He's back. All right. Hey, Mason, thanks for being on the Sports Maven this morning. Of course, this is 1300 CBS Sports Radio in the Baltimore studios, and we're going to put you back on the ad stream, and we'll be back on the air in a few minutes.
Anytime. You know who the Ravens are probably going to hire as their offensive coordinator?
Jim Zorn?
Yep.
Jim Cameron.
You know him well.
I know him well.
You don't love him well. Think.
Shanahan?
Mike Shanahan? Kyle. I'd like to see Kyle get a shot.
Why? He has his own job.
Well, he quit.
He was on the Browns?
Yeah,
He quit?
he quit.
Why?
I thought he was going to go someplace else. Just didn't seem to come through. I don't know why he left.
He's going to be here. This Kubiak's gone.
Mm-hmm. Well, you can't stop somebody from becoming a head coach.
No, I'm not blaming him.
Right.
It's just a shame is him and Joe were such a combo.
Yeah, it was working.
Yeah.
Well, it worked. What, 12, 10 weeks out. A couple of those weeks offense.
I know, but overall, we're inches away from being in the AFL championship game, so.
The AFL.
Yeah, AFL, NFL. We'll get back to
AFC.
which league that is in a minute. I know we're going to cover it, and Freddie's coming up.
Yeah.
He probably knows a lot more about it than I do.
Right.
But hearing that Duquette might leave, and I had a headline from another source, from one of the wire sources, said the Orioles are looking at Coletti and some other guys, and they're already moving on. I don't get it.
You can't stop it.
So,
We're going to talk about that.
Yeah.
Gratitude.
gratitude.
This
Yeah.
guy was down and out for 10 years.
Yeah, he'll become the CEO of something.
Who?
Dan Duquette.
As long as we got Buck.
Did what?
Buck's a
What?
winner.
Who is that?
Who's the GM of the Orioles? So here's
Why
something
did
you
he-
wouldn't have seen before out there in Twitter land. front page of the Washington Post, Big Ten standings. So for the Big Ten, it sort of worked to pick up Maryland, because instead of looking at ACC basketball in one of the most widely read newspapers in the world,
All right, back here on segment 2 of Coons Ford presents a Sports Maven. And no one ever has to be injured. When this situation is thrust upon you or a member of your family, you have a right and duty to protect yourself and your family from financial harm. Science at Kirk will provide immediate assistance in getting medical care, securing lost wages, and advising on property damage and claim analysis. You can call Science at Kirk's free injury hotline 24/7 at 1-800-LAWYERS. Call Science at Kirk at 1-800-LAWYERS if you're injured and have a personal injury claim you wish to discuss with an attorney. I've known Donald for over 50 years, and there's no one better to represent you. And again, we thank Donald for his sponsorship of In the Nest. It was a great season this year. No, we are not on tomorrow because the Ravens are not in the championship game, which leads us to our next topic, and that is Gary Kubiak's future with the Ravens is looking very, very bleak. And to get an editorial comment on that, we bring in our Boca Raton expert, Freddie. Freddie, how are you today?
I'm doing well. Good morning, gentlemen. I think, wouldn't it be kind of strange if Kubiak goes to Denver and Duquette goes to Toronto, and when they both have the Voodoo Band come to their homes, their Mayflower Band?
Yeah, that's what it seems like. All right. But
I think Kubiak is going to go on. I think Kubiak, when John Elway says, come home, please, we need you, plus they give you a lot of money.
yeah, there's not. First of all, if Kubiak wasn't going to interested, he wouldn't go. So once you heard that he's meeting with Elway on Sunday, I'll be surprised if he comes back home except to pick up his family.
I don't.
think he was expecting. I think he made the announcement. He was happy with Baltimore, but he was happy with Baltimore, and maybe thought that the jobs that would become available weren't the type of jobs he'd be looking for. Maybe at this time, maybe give a year or two just away from head coaching. But when Denver called, it's a different story for him, obviously.
I can't see any way that if somebody offers you a head coaching job and you want to be a head coach, that you don't take it, and that everybody ends up wishing you well, even though it looked like it was really starting to work here, and it could have been a fantastic special offense for years. But hey, the guy wants to be a head coach, and he just
Well, wait a minute. I don't know that he wanted to be a head coach. I think that he made that announcement, and I believe he was sincere. He's building a house here. It's under construction. I think that he didn't want the coaching jobs available because he felt like they were probably all dead ends. He'd have to kill himself to make it happen, and he does have a heart condition. But when his best friend calls, where he was at for, was it 20 years, Freddie? And it's going to offer him tons of money, and he knows that how aggressive Elway is. Although I do believe, though, that team's going to be torn up and start all over again.
That's when you said it's a better situation. If Manning, maybe this is the move to get Manning to say, I'll come back, because you're bringing in Kubiak. And now you got Elway, Kubiak, who was a quarterback there for a long time, and then you got Manning.
Remember this, though. When Kubiak was at Houston, Manning wanted to go to Houston, and Kubiak chose Matt Schaub over Manning. He did not want Manning there. So I'm not so sure that if Kubiak goes to Denver, that maybe Manning might not be the quarterback there. I don't think that relationship is the fact that he didn't want Manning in Houston and chose Matt Schaub does not reflect well on him, to be honest with you. But that being the case, it might not be the perfect setup to have, Manning return to Denver. But let's look at, and you're right, nobody can blame him. I mean, if I have no idea what he's making, but I would assume he's probably the highest paid coordinator in football, but it's still not going to be head coach money. And I guess they're going to surround him with whatever he wants coach wise to make life easier, but he will be a big loss. But Freddie, Dan Duquette's the one I'm worried about leaving.
I think he's gone.
Oh, he's definitely gone.
The sooner the
At this point, you're right. It's a shame because in this case, I'm really going to take up for Mr. A, of course, referring to Mr. Angelos. Dan Duquette was down and out. Nobody wanted him. I mean, was he blackballed or was he like nobody? He didn't get a smell for a job for a long, long time. Mr. A gives him the opportunity, and sure, he did a phenomenal job, albeit with a little bit of help from Andy McPhail, but he still did a great job. Yeah, a little bit of help. But Duquette's done a great job. Yeah, but he. Yes, it is. That's why he's leaving. I don't believe just answer the phone. He doesn't do things like that.
Yeah.
He's going to be doing the same thing he's doing with the Orioles that he might be the best in baseball at.
So, Bruce, why is it important? Because we've discussed this. That they make him the CEO. That makes it eligible.
Because when you elevate yourself, when there's a consideration of elevation,
right.
All right. When you take exactly
That's
right.
Why.
Now, did it affect the way he was looking for guys for the Orioles and trying to make deals? I don't think so. I don't. Not anymore. He's changed. He really is. Right. The 2 or 3 times I met him, Freddie, he was as cordial as he could be, as nice as he could be, engaging. And, he doesn't know me from Adam, but that's how he was. And I think that's how he became because he realized that in Boston it hurt him. Let's move on.
I got one more question.
Yeah.
The question is, when is this going to happen, and why is he still here? Really
I think
quick.
it's what I don't know. I can't. Probably the negotiation for players. Right. But if Angelos. All-Star game.
Yeah.
Others to act as mediators. They heard each side's story. They sided with Washington, and now Angelos is suing them. Major League Baseball saying that the mediators, the owners, were biased.
Right, and the All-Star games in San Diego.
Who cares?
I want to go see.
Who cares? Well, Angelos is not going to lay down and take a.
because everything he does has to be examined, and he's going to present a case and stuff to handle it. It's going to be very trying.
Yeah.
When you're an excellent CEO of baseball operations, or vice president, whatever his title is, and he does a heck of a lot more than to get everything he does. I got to go talk Peter this. It's weird. It's not the right way to do his job.
Well, listen, we don't know that that's the case. It might be, it might not, but I want to make one point. If Angelos would lay down and accept a double A player in return for Duquette, I'd be extremely disappointed. If they're going to steal Duquette from us, we need to get some kind of compensation, because that, right, and that's fine. I'm good with that. All right, real quick, Freddie, let's look. Chris Davis, $12 million, gets $1.7 million raise, all right, from the Orioles after what happened last year. It's good to be a good baseball player, isn't it? I said it's good to be a good baseball player. Chris. And Matt Wieters, he's up to $8.3 million, a $600,000 raise.
Is he going to be a catcher again?
Yeah, he'll be our catcher. I hope. Chris Tillman, I think that's the right number for him, $4.3 million. I think that's pretty strong. Brian Mattis got an $800,000 raise up to $3.2 million. And you wonder why it's tough to make things work. I mean, this is with no addition. I mean, they're already going to be a higher payroll losing Cruz.
Right. Well, I'm wondering if maybe with that elbow thing that Wieters plays a couple other positions. And when we saw him when he wasn't catching every day, before they put him on the DL, he was hitting the cover off the ball.
Well, let's hope that comes back. Bud Norris. Do you think Bud Norris is worth $10 million a year? No, that's what he wants. The Orioles offered 7.5. Steve Pierce, I think they low. Yeah, that's just. Freddie, how about this one? They only offered Steve Pierce $2 million. He's at $5.4 million.
Ooh. Well, there's another guy who was hitting the cover off the ball.
All right, here's one for you. Zach Britton, what would you think he'd be offered?
Zach Britton,
our closer.
3-4 million.
4.5 is what I think.
He wants 4.2. We offered 2.2.
Well, he's probably making 500,000. So that's fine.
Miguel Gonzalez, they're 3.9 million. He wants. They offered him 2.5. And Ryan Flaherty wants $1.5 million, and the Orioles offered $900,000. So they got. Yeah, well, he turned out to be pretty important and pretty productive when it counted last year. No, you're right. I'm not arguing with you. And also, Ryan Flaherty's a guy who, if it doesn't work out, they're not going to lose much sleep over. You know, although it's Buck's guy, so I would guess they'll compromise with him. That's right. Duquette and Flaherty, for who I don't know.
Well, I take one Tim Hortons coffee franchise and whatever else they throw in.
Tim Horton. You're right. Freddie, thanks a lot for checking in today. All right, this is Bruce Posner. You're listening to Coons Ford Presents a Sports Maven. We'll be back in a few minutes. Take a look at the AFC and NFC title games, and you will hear my movie review of. Oh, we'll talk about the Maryland thing too.
Talking about the Maryland thing, and I got my Penn. If we had Freddie for the whole time, I would have asked him what he thought about the Penn State.
55:05 is your out time.
Okay.
Oh, hey, you guys want to talk about that?
What? Well, I was, if I had 30 seconds to rant about something.
What, getting their wins back?
I don't understand what you have to do to actually get in trouble anymore. If you can do what Penn State did, and they still haven't refuted that actually happened, it's just the punishment for it.
Right.
And you end up with, they shorten the bowl.
Well, now it's
ban.
all over,
It's
right?
over. So what crime could you possibly
You know what happened
commit?
next? The statue will come back.
Yeah, and they'll rename the library again, or whatever they took away. How in the world can this be?
Who cares?
Because it leads to more people doing whatever the heck they want to do, knowing that there's nothing that's ever going to happen to you. And that was a pretty darn serious offense. And then you look at like the Tattoo Gate scandal at Ohio State, and they got equal punishment for what happened at Penn State. It just doesn't work for me. And you remember how emotional Gary Williams was last night when they talked about, he was talking about the coming off the sanctions that Maryland got for giving a kid a ride to class.
Right. Who was it?
Who did they give a ride to? Rudy Archer.
Rudy Archer. Who was that?
Yes, my take, I know we might not have that much time during the show on air, is how emotional everybody was, close to tears, talking about how much Gary Williams being at Maryland meant. And the quotes that they gave. I think my favorite quote that was thrown out there was that success is not owned, it's leased, and you have to pay the rent and end up with that office. Because there's nothing more true than that.
It is.
Have you ever played golf with Williams? You played with Edsel, right?
Many times, but no, I never played with Williams, but I see him at caves when I go. It seems like he's always there. And I hear, and all the caddies tell me that he's got the worst temper they've ever seen.
Are you surprised?
No. I am a little surprised. I don't know how it could be that important to him.
He just seems to be that competitive about everything.
I know, but when you're not that good, and apparently he's not that good,
Right.
you know, I think there comes a time when you play golf, you're not that good, you realize you're just having fun. You know?
That's a good point. I think the line with Kevin Plank, what he said, Gary was allowed for a putt, and he said,
Yeah.
I hope you make it. And it sounded like that almost started a thing. So what's it like after seeing all these people on TV your whole life to actually be there? What looked to me like a TV event. If they said this is the TV tribute to Gary as a coach, is it different being there than watching everything on television?
Yeah, it definitely is. It had a lot of a different of an atmosphere about it, and just seeing the people, they look a lot different in real life than they do on TV.
You know what I always amazed at is that, you know, you look at the guards and everything on TV, and even from the stands, they look small, and then you stand next to them. And kind of like Juan Dixon's, like, he's a big guy.
Yeah, he's a lot bigger now than he was.
And Mike Grinnan, I mean, like,
Yeah.
he's a big guy.
Yeah.
Williams, he was so choked up last night.
Yeah.
He had trouble. I wasn't sure he was going to get through it.
Right.
But he was, I think the thing that came out of it last night was how he helped so many of these guys get their careers wrong.
Yeah.
When you heard Ed Tapscott
Right.
and Walt Williams seemed to, you know, Williams is always in deference to Walt Williams, but it seemed the other way around.
Yeah.
You know, and I liked how he mentioned every player that was there almost.
Yeah.
I don't think he missed anybody.
It's pretty cool.
It was great.
Well, when we go back on the radio, I'll put this back in my ear so I don't miss the end time.
All right. We were just talking about the event last night, Gary Williams, and they were talking about how fierce a competitor he is on the golf course. And just, you know, it was kind of like I don't know, like a 25% roast. But what a night. What an honor for Gary Williams. And, of course, we were there. It was a great opportunity to pay tribute to him for being selected to 2 Hall of Fames. And you go through his career, but we know his career. We know how great he was and what a great coach he was. And but the thing that impressed me, Wayne, was how all the speakers including Kevin Plank, thank Gary for helping them with their careers.
Well,
Juan
Kevin-
Dixon and Tapscott, Walt Williams, Scott Van Pelt. Well, I mean, Scott Van Pelt was talking like a fan about how he still can't believe he's friends with Gary like he is, but it was superb. Go ahead.
Well, the Kevin Plank part is that he really credits Gary Williams because Kevin Plank said he had a small company that made stuff for a football team. And it took Gary Williams getting behind the idea that Under Armour would supply the University of Maryland. They'd switch the basketball from Nike to Under Armour. That really made Kevin Plank thought it was one of the biggest days in the history of Under Armour. The other part that I want you to talk about, because I think you have some connection with Michigan State, so we're sitting there eating a salad, and who walks in? Tom Izzo walks into the conference room with probably 200 people, and this isn't the biggest event, and goes up and makes an impromptu speech about Gary. What'd you think about
I thought
that?
it was great. Tom Izzo is just a first-class guy, and he was one of the, if you follow it, I think he was in D.C. when it was announced. Obviously, he's friends with Gary. It was in D.C. when it was announced. He's been a big advocate of Maryland, and I have a feeling that all that love might end today around 6:30. All right, because I don't remember Michigan State ever playing here.
No, I don't either.
Right. I'm sure they might have years and years ago without Izzo, but I don't remember them playing. Maybe was it Judd Heathcote? Maybe they were. I don't know.
I've never seen them play Maryland. I saw them play. I think it was GW. I saw them play at Verizon Center 5 years ago. They came to the.
Well, they went to
the
Towson when the Towson Center opened. That's the kind of guy Izzo is. So anyway, he says he's walking into an ambush. I have to tell everybody out there, I happen to know there's a few tickets left, and I don't mean a lot. There are a few tickets left. You can go to the website. If you have nothing to do today, and maybe your son's a basketball guy, or your grandson, or whatever, or
even your daughter,
your daughter, your wife, anybody, or you want to go by yourself, go to this game today.
It's going to be loud. It's going to be mad. It's going to be intense. It's going to be every reason you want to go to a college basketball game.
And the history of who's going to be there for Maryland, everybody's going to be there,
including Scott Van Pelt.
Right, and if you like the Ravens, Mr. Bisciotti will be there.
Hey, you got a chance to say hi last night.
I sure did, and I guarantee you, Torrey will be there, and maybe Harbaugh. I mean, this is a game. This is a game. If you're going to go to one game, and I'm telling you, there's a few tickets left. As far as I looked last night.
Well, this is going to be our equation to the Duke game because it's on a Saturday afternoon. Yeah, whiskey's coming in, but it's Tuesday at 7.
Whiskey's referring to Wisconsin. I don't know where this whiskey comes from. Is that what they're called?
Yeah, whiskey, and then their Badger guy there, Bucky the Badger.
Right. But anyway,
anyhow,
I believe that Michigan State is going to turn out to be our basketball rival per se. All right, and probably Penn State and every other sport. But in basketball, Penn State, Maryland will never be a rival unless Penn State
gets good.
Gets good.
You got to get good.
But Michigan State's always going to be good.
So you said Penn State, which is.
But let me finish. I'm going to give you your rant. I'm going to give you a rant, okay? And I'm not going to talk about Torrey Smith re-signing because I've done it too much. But anyway, last night, so Duquette comes in. I mean, not Duquette. Izzo comes in, he speaks, and they joke about him, and he's joking about Gary. And Dane Fife, my Michigan State connection, Dane Fife was my son's roommate at Indiana. And Dane Fife was also the most outstanding player for Indiana in the championship game against Maryland. And I got a little bit of chance to talk to him, and he said to me that Michigan State is really looking forward to this crowd today. And he compared it to Iowa. He said Iowa is the loudest, craziest crowd he's ever heard.
Well, today might be a little different. On the way in, Mason said the rankings of the top 10 most hostile crowds came out. And even though Maryland hasn't had the best basketball record in the past few years, they are on the list of the top 10 most hostile. And I love that part.
Yeah, well, they don't need that.
I don't mean the mean part, just the
Izzo is not Coach K. Izzo is just a great, down-to-earth guy with no arrogance. He is a phenomenal guy. All right, Penn State, all of their wins were put back on the shelf.
111 wins back.
Everything's back to normal. What do you have to say about that, Wayne?
To keep it clean, I can't believe that after everything that happened there, and I'm not getting into what was done and who knew, the investigation at the end of this is they give them everything back. And my point is that if you can have a crime like that committed on your campus and your locker facilities, and a couple years later people go, don't worry about it, it leaves me open to what in the world do you have to do to actually get in trouble anymore. Maryland went to NCAA hell for giving a player a ride to class. And this happens at Penn State, and they just absolved them of everything. And no, I never liked them. But I cannot believe that you can get away with this stuff today. And I'll keep it to there's my 30 seconds.
All right, you asked for it, you got it. So, we got a big one today. All right? I think that if you're going to see, I harken back to Urban Meyer, who I think everybody in the listening audience will agree is the best coach in college football. And he proved it this past season. And that's the way it is. You might not like to say that or hear that, but that's the fact. When he came to Maryland, he said, after the game, he said, we had one goal this week, and that was to stop Stephon Diggs. And guess what happened that game? They stopped Stephon Diggs. I say great coaches, that's how they think. They pick the target they want to, they want to stop, and they sell out to stop that. Maybe it's a 3-point shot. Maybe it's a player. I do believe that the target for Maryland, of course, it's not Des Wells.
No.
It's Melo Trimble.
Absolutely.
Because you can see it when Melo Trimble goes out of the game. Turgeon starts to worry, and before you know it, he always tries to couch when he takes him out. He takes him out 30 seconds of a break before the 4-minute break, and then tries to stretch as much time as he can.
Right. You see it at the 12-minute media timeout. And the problem is you only have one guy like Melo Trimble.
Right. And Melo is, but that's not unusual. It's hard to find guys like him. Let me tell you something else about Melo before we have to go. Melo Trimble, watch the game today. Watch the game and observe how Melo Trimble does things that don't show up in the stats as far as loose balls go, as far as getting that rebound on the offside when the shot comes. All right, maybe when they're in a zone or not. How about making the smart pass, driving through the lane like he did the other day, firing the ball to Dez? Everything he does has a purpose. We are lucky to have this kid. We will win, I guarantee you, as long as this kid is at Maryland. He is special. He is very, very special, Wayne.
I thought you were going to say the stuff that doesn't count as much on the scoreboard is when he's standing there and the ball's moving and he's telling people where to go. His leadership, even without the ball, makes that offense go. And that's what happens when he's not there. You start to see people out of position. Ball doesn't move as well. You're right on, Bruce. You got Maryland as a winner today?
Yes, I do. I think just like Patrick said, they're going to eke out a very close game. No, I would not be shocked. I think they're a 3-point favorite. I would not be shocked if Michigan State won. I think it's a pickup kind of game, but I do believe Maryland will win. Why? Because of the home crowd. The home crowd will not let them get down, and there'll be ebbs and flows in this game. And wow, I just can't wait for it. I haven't had this feeling in a while, Wayne.
It's going to be great today. Just great to be there.
I say it again. Few tickets available. Get them. Don't worry about sitting in the upper deck. You still feel everything. It'll be super. All right, this is Bruce Posner. Thanks for Wayne Viener coming in today. You've been listening to Coons 4 Presents the Sports Maven, and we will see you next Saturday and, of course, Wednesday on Turf Talk.
Oh, boy. Yeah, let's get this. Hold on.